Hey guys, Rekkid Talk, and so I'm going to start a new series today that I'll be doing sometimes. It's called Ranking Some of the. So it's a ranking, but it won't be ranking entire discographies. Sometimes it'll be ranking part of a discography of a group. Sometimes it'll be ranking songs from their whole discography or songs from one particular classic album, or maybe ranking some bands from a different city or a different genre. But it's going to be called Ranking Some of the. And a gimmick that I'm kind of stealing from Pete Pardo in his UK Connection show is that we're going to have like a worst of the bottom of. We'll have a wild card, and then we'll have a top. Today I'm going to do top three. Some days I might do top five, top two. That'll be up to my whim. But who I'm going to start this with is ranking some of the Siouxsie and the Banshees albums. So again, not tackling the entire discography, but we'll see a part of it. So I'm going to give you a bottom, a wild card, and a top three. So we'll start off with the bottom. So my least favorite Siouxsie and the Banshees album is Superstition from 1991. I have it on CD, and this is not really one I probably will ever get on vinyl. I'd have to like run across it really cheap, and I might not even get it then. I mean, Kiss Them for Me was kind of a hit for her in the US, but I don't like that song at all. Fear of the Unknown's not too bad. Most of these songs, though, I find them to be pretty forgettable. It's just not, it's not cool and gothic like you want your Siouxsie and the Banshees to be. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my wild card. So usually in a ranking the album's discography, I would not include compilations. But my wild card is going to be Once Upon a Time, the singles. So this is actually, she did a Twice Upon a Time as well for later in the career. But these were singles from early in the career, 1978 through 1981. One of the reasons why I'm including this is it actually has several songs that are really great songs. Hong Kong Garden is only on here. Israel. I'm trying to remember which ones were only from the Love in a Void. I think was only a single. Several of these were not on albums. The Staircase, and so you kind of need it if you're really into Siouxsie and the Banshees. Then we'll get into my top three albums. My top two are pretty much set. My number three really would change from day to day. If I was going to redo this a few months down the road, there were several contenders for my number three. I ended up going with Tinderbox from 1986. And so you've got songs like Candyman, probably the most well-known song in here, Cities of Dust, 92 Degrees, Land's End. And so, and I thought about some of the stuff like Hyena, A Kiss in the Dream House, Through the Looking Glass, but I went with Tinderbox as my number three. And as I said, my top two are really set. My number two is going to be from 1988, Peep Show. And since I grew up in the U.S. and I grew up in sort of a small town in the 1980s, I wasn't really hearing Siouxsie and the Banshees until I went to college. And this is really kind of the album that kind of broke her in like the alternative college rock crowd in the U.S. I know for those of you in the U.K., she had been a star for several years. But I think this is just great. I remember probably the first time I ever saw the Peekaboo video on MTV. I'm like, who the hell is this? And Siouxsie, The Killing Jar is a great song. Ornaments of Gold, The Last Beat of My Heart, Rhapsody. Strong album front to back. And as sort of a second wild card, I do have the 12-inch single of Peekaboo, even though I don't have, unlike Superstition, I would like to get Peep Show on vinyl at some point. But my number one and what I feel is the masterpiece by this group, 1981, Siouxsie and the Banshees, Juju. So this is the lineup. I think this was the second album after they had brought in Budgie on drums. I just love Budgie as a drummer. and John McGeoch on guitar. Unfortunately, McGeoch only lasted for one more album, but he was in for all of the Siouxsie and the Banshees, along with, of course, Siouxsie, Sue, and Steve Severin on bass. Guitar, as we know, was always a revolving door. Spellbound, the first song on this album. I mean, if you don't like Spellbound, you just don't like Siouxsie and the Banshees. Arabian Nights, Halloween, Sin in My Heart. You've got Siouxsie playing like the one chord she knows how to play on a guitar, and McGeoch just going off in outer space at the same time. A Head Cut, Voodoo Dolly. If you run across it on YouTube, the Rockpalast German TV show. There's a show from Cologne, I think in June or July of 1981. I think it's just them at their absolute peak of their powers. So there you go, ranking some of the Siouxsie and Banshees albums. My top three were Tinderbox from 86, Peep Show from 1988, and my favorite Siouxsie album is Juju from 1981.